for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I'm back to where I started in November of 2011. I started this show to educate people about the criminal justice system because I used to receive so many calls at my office saying, Miss King, why did this happen to me? Why did that happen to me? This is the way I was treated in the courthouse. This is not fair. I don't like my lawyer, but I don't have any money to pay you, but I would like for you to take my case. And I've researched and I found out about you. And obviously, I was in business to make money, although I didn't always, because half of my clients were just above the poverty line. But I thought that there was a grave gap in the educational process of the criminal justice system. It controls so many of our lives, but yet we know so little about the law. And then a lot of my clients or people I'd meet would argue with me and tell me what the law was when they weren't lawyers. So I realized that there was an educational gap in the criminal justice system, and I thought the easiest way to filter all of those calls I would get every day would be to let people come and tell their stories. So if they feel like they were tricked by the criminal justice system, duped by the criminal justice system, treated unfairly, or treated positively, that we could share these stories in an effort to educate people about the system. And I was a defense attorney for 22 years. However, I started my career as a prosecutor in the Harris County District Attorney's Office. And in January of 2017, I went back to the Harris County District Attorney's Office, where I'm proud to talk about the law on both ends. And today, I have joined in the studio with me Mr. Austin Hobbs, who is a defense attorney. And I also have Mr. Hobbs' his client, Mr. Cedric Mason. And he is going to talk about an experience that he had. Cedric, so I got your name because you called me because you didn't know that I was no longer a defense attorney. And so tell me where you got my name from and why you called me.
Well, I was incarcerated in June 7th of last year, and I had met a guy named Frederick Johnson, and he told me about how you worked on this case and how good you was, and he also told me that you had moved over into the prosecutor's office. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to reach out because he told me, to try to reach out and see, if I could get some type of leeway through my case through your office. So when I did reach out, someone, I think Miss Constant, told me that I couldn't speak to you or talk to anyone until the case was resolved. So, once that was resolved, then y'all reached back out to me, and I'm here today.
Okay. Yeah, Constance we keep a list of people who call the office. Like I said, that's why I started the show, so that people, instead of them wanting advice from me, because I can't help them if they have a lawyer, and I'm not going to help them for free. Right. I pick a few that I do. I used to pick a few I did for free every year, but they were ones I picked. You can't pick me, I picked you.
Right.
So you had an opportunity. So people, when they called, if you really care and you really want help or you really want people to know how you feel, I created this forum for people to vent, basically.
Right.
And to just kind of explore what they've learned about the criminal justice system. So hopefully, and I put it on YouTube so that hopefully nobody will have to go through that experience, or they have a point of reference, to talk about. So that's kind of and so that's why you were put on a list, because you called my old office. And that's an office, that I lease now, but I still have 3 cases that are unresolved that are writs that lawyers are handling in my behalf. And so I'm still loyal to those people. So I'm just kind of around, and I own the little building. So so I'm there on the weekends just trying to make sure that nobody's destroyed the place. So
right.
Anyway, and that's how Constance checks the mail, and I had some people renting it, so she's trying to deal with that. So that's what she does on the weekends.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so tell me so you got arrested in June of 2017. Tell me how that happened.
Well, I was dating a female named Tania World, and me and her had been together like 4 years. We on and off, breaking up. So I had got to the point where I really got tired of just being in the situation, so I tried to leave.
Did you live with her?
Yeah, yes ma'am. I lived with her. And I had left like a month prior to my arrest, around Mother's Day time, and she called me crying, talking about she found out she was dying, having cancer. So could I come back and help her with Sky, which is her daughter. And so, by me, the way I was raised, she was there for me. So when my grandmother passed, so I just took up on, to try to return the favor, since she said she was dying, having cancer, and she had cancer. But not knowing that, going back would be me going to jail. So,
Wow.
and she accused me of, making some kind of sexual assault charges against my stepdaughter, which I didn't. And just so I guess she could see me in jail and I wouldn't be with nobody else. That's the only way I could think of. It was out of hatred. So that's how I ended up in jail, stayed in for 5 months and bonded out. And I think the case got dismissed like in February.
How much was your bond?
At first it was $75,000, then they dropped it down to $50,000.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So who bonded you out?
My grandmother. My grandmother on my dad's side, and a couple of guys that I know from in the world. They came up with the money to post my bond.
Well, that's good. You had good friends like that.
I mean, well, they believed in me, know I didn't do it, so didn't want to see me just sitting in there.
Do you have any biological kids yourself?
Yes, ma'am. I have a daughter and 2 grandkids.
Okay, so your daughter's, how old is your daughter?
My daughter is 22.
Okay. So 1 biological daughter and then 2 grandkids.
Yes, ma'am.
So she told you she was dying of cancer. Was that true?
Come to find out, I think it's not true, because she's still living and still causing confusions in other people's lives from my understanding. So I don't think it was true. I think it was all false, just to get me back to come back there.
So to help me understand. So when you went to check on her, that's when the police arrested you?
No. Well, when she called me back to come, I had been staying back with her probably within 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a month. And we had got into it the night before, and she told me she wanted, if I wasn't happy there, to get my stuff and leave. So I said, well, you know what, you're right. But at that time, it was like 2:30 in the morning. So I told her, I said, well, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to leave in the morning when I get up. So when she woke me up, she was like, hey, what you going to do? I got some errands to run. Not knowing that, really, in actuality, she wanted me to go with her to run her errands, but she didn't say that. So I'm thinking she's still on the trip from the night before. So I get up and get myself together, and as I'm getting ready to leave, I asked her, I said, well, hey, how long you going to be gone? She was like, why? I said, well, because I want to know, because I'm going to leave my stuff here and come back and get it. And from there, she flipped out. And we went to Oregon that point of time, and then from there, it went from Oregon to where she didn't want to give me my stuff. So I remember she had the car running outside, so I took the key to the car. We backwards and forward, give my key, give my clothes. And then I told her.
It's her car, though.
It's her car, yeah. So from there, we went from there to, next thing you know, we going to the Galleria. And went to the Galleria, from the Galleria back home, and late on that night, the police showed up. And I was in the back of the police car for 8 hours, didn't know what I was in there for.
Now, where was the little girl when y'all were arguing that night?
The night before or doing it?
The night before.
Oh, she was asleep.
And what about the next day when you...
She was around. She was in the living room at the time. She seen everything.
Because it's June and it's summer.
Yeah, so she was around, she was inside the living room.
Okay, and then what happened after that?
So
you don't know how you get in the back of the police car?
Yeah, I don't know what I was in the back of the police car for 8 hours until I got downtown and they told me what I was being arrested for, well, what I was being questioned for. And then once they did the interview, went from there, then she went and made a phone call, then she told me I was being arrested. So.
Now who is she? The police
officer, yeah, that was doing the investigation that morning rather.
And so what did you tell her? Did you cooperate with the investigation?
Yeah, I mean, like I told her, I didn't have nothing to hide because it's false allegations, and whatever she wanted to do. If she wanted to take a lie detector at that point of time, or she wanted to take a swab, which they did swab my mouth. Whatever she was willing to do and wanted to do, I was willing to do it. Even though I know I wasn't supposed to, my rights was to have my attorney present. But by me not having nothing to hide, I didn't mind doing whatever it took to show my to prove my innocence.
So what happened?
She's, like I say, she swabbed my mouth. After that, they took me and detained me, and I was in jail till November, till I got out.
Okay, so how were you feeling when going to jail, going from Galleria of Freedom or whatever, and then going to jail? How did you feel about that?
I mean, it was real messed up. It was a real messed up situation, which, I prayed about it, and just asked God to keep me strong, and, and that's all I did, Wasn't nothing else I could do. I mean, I'm in the hands of Harris County, so there's nothing I could do but just sit and wait till, my day of justice come. And it came.
Did you always know that you were going to fight the case?
Yeah, I'm a fighter, so I was not going to never cop out to nothing, was not going to sign for nothing. We was going to have to go to trial.
Do you have a criminal record?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
I've been to the federal system before.
For what?
Drugs.
And how long did you have to do in the federal?
8.5 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
What years were you in federal?
From 2003 to 2010.
Okay. Is that your only time going to prison?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the charge in federal?
Possession of a controlled substance.
How'd you get caught? Why was it a federal crime?
Because I was out of town.
Transporting it back and forth, or what?
Well, not transporting back and forth, just out of town, and a guy that I was dealing with set me up because he had got in trouble. So.
Okay. So was it in Texas?
No, it was in Louisiana.
Is that where you did the time?
No, I did the time in Texas though.
Okay. Are you from Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you've been in jail before, so you had the wherewithal to sit it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me how the system worked. So we're educating people through stories. So are you anticipating hiring someone? You're anticipating getting a court-appointed lawyer? What was your strategy?
Well, at the time,
to defend yourself.
At the time, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my family didn't have the money for an attorney.
And who does your family consist of?
My mother, my father, my aunt, my aunts, and they didn't have the money at the time, so I was just basically going with the court-appointed lawyer that they gave me, which was Mr. Dorian.
Dorian Cotler.
Okay. And I looked him up, and they say he seemed to be a pretty good lawyer, so I just kept my faith in him, and prayed to God and asking God to work through him. So, and that's what happened.
All right, so this is a good segue to bring Austin in. So, Austin, introduce yourself to the audience and how you got affiliated with Cedric's case.
Okay, good evening. I work with Mr. Cotler's office. At the time, it was just the Cotler Law offices. We've since merged with Hands and Laporte here in Houston. And I think back in June of last year, Cedric was in jail, and Judge Cabanis asked Dorian and me to represent him, and we said, "Gladly, Judge."
Okay.
And so,
tell us your approach in representing Mr. Cedric.
On this case, Mr. Cotler was lead, and so most of the, defense investigation and kind of assignments were made by him, and the decisions by the case were made by him. For the most part, I think Dorian went to most of the court settings, right? Cedric, I may have been there a couple times.
Right.
I didn't really involve myself in the negotiations. I left that up to Dorian. But my involvement would be reviewing the offense report. Back in, I want to say like August of last year, I went to the Child Assessment Center and reviewed some of the videos that were taken of the complaining witness, the young lady. There were I think like 5 or 6 videos taken by her over the course of several years, from around 2011, I think, is the first one, through 2017. So June
And did you,
2017.
when you went to look at the videos in August, did you know that there were that many videos? Was that in the police report?
We did, yes.
It was in the police report.
It was in the, I think it was in the police report, or at least, if not in the police report, then just in the course of our discovery process, talking to the prosecutor and things like that, noticing that there are, 5 or 6 videos.
Right. And tell us your approach in how you deal with that. So usually, when there's a child victim in a case, the Children's Assessment Center on Bolliver, I think that's the way you say it. How do you say it? Bolivar? Is it Bolliver?
Bolivar.
On Bolivar Boulevard in West University, they have a system where they take the statements from the children, and that becomes part of the evidence that the police gather and turn into the district attorney's office, that then has to be reviewed by the defense lawyers. They don't get a copy of it, but the defense lawyers are able to go and review that video, and this is the process that Mr. Hobbs is talking about. So in reviewing the video, you don't have to go into detail or anything that you don't think is appropriate to say, but what was your assessment?
Well, I viewed 2 videos, video 1 and video 2, a video from 2011 and a video from probably 2013. And then Mr. Kotler viewed the other video. So we, split it up so that there'd be, we could both be working.
Right.
Instead of, because the videos can be long sometimes.
No.
The videos that I watched, again, were very early on in her, so she was 3 in one video and like 5 or 6 in the second video. And in those videos, Mr. Mason's, Cedric's name was never mentioned. Okay. He wasn't alleged to be the perpetrator there. 2 other gentlemen were. Okay. And so, but my role was really just to go through them to see whether or not Cedric was involved or implicated in those things, and really just to kind of weed out what is relevant to Cedric's case and what is not relevant to Cedric's case. And it turns out that the 2 videos that I watched were not, and then Mr. Kotler reviewed the other videos. I think some of them were pretty short, so it made his work a little bit lighter, and then finally got to, I think, 2 videos in which Cedric's name was actually mentioned, but reading through kind of a summary here, I don't even remember or even note that she makes any formal allegations on those videos. I think his name is mentioned because this is post-arrest, when she's, post Mr. Mason's arrest, when she's interviewed. And so I think the name is brought up to her because he is now a suspect on this case. And so, but I don't think she makes any really outcry type statements in those videos. I think mom or aunt is the only outcry witnesses.
Which is interesting that he was arrested without there being an outcry statement. Don't you find that a little unusual?
Absolutely.
I don't remember ever having a case like that.
Yeah, these are,
without the child saying it on the video.
Right. And so,
and what I'm saying is the child usually makes the sexual allegation on the video. I mean, that's the purpose of it. And generally, it's not the mother or any relative doing it unless they actually saw it. But generally, the child still has to be able to articulate it.
Right, and I think that's the point of the CAC video.
Yeah.
Is so that someone that's kind of detached from the relationship with the child can sit in there, a social worker, whomever, can sit in there and talk to them about truth and lie, and talk to them about, in these kind of cases, what is appropriate touching, what's not appropriate touching. They go through all this kind of same setup so that the child understands that it's a comfortable place, they can be honest, and they can talk about this. And I don't recall, and this is just my reviewing it prior to this evening's thing, but I don't recall her making any allegations about Cedric in any of those 2 videos. I think, again, back in 2011 and 2013 and all the other times she was interviewed, she did make outcry statements about other men.
Did those men go to prison?
I'm not aware. I don't know. Because I don't have last names. They're all
Right.
first names and
Yeah, I
things
just
like
didn't
that.
know
So
in talking to the prosecutor and in working on the case if you ever knew the outcome.
I don't recall.
You don't recall.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, what was your approach in this case or any case like this in trying to negotiate with this kind of information? It can be hypothetical or appropriate. I mean,
Sure.
or in this case, I'm just curious.
And like I said, Mr. Kotler did most of the negotiating
Sure.
with the DA's office on this case.
So what would your approach be?
But on a case like this, where we don't have any physical evidence, I think she had done a SANE evaluation.
And explain what that is.
A SANE is a sexual assault nurse examination where they take physical evidence or look for physical evidence. Everything from physical lacerations and tears to bodily fluids that can be secreted.
Or pubic hairs.
Or pubic hair, or anything that might indicate, A, that a sexual trauma had occurred, and B, that if they can, try to collect DNA or other physical evidence that would link up a person to that offense.
And for our educational purposes, the SANE nurse, sexual assault nurse examiner, is located at the Children's Assessment Center. So when someone is arrested for a sexual assault crime, as Mr. Cedric Mason is, the child should be taken to the Children's Assessment Center or hospital that night for a SANE nurse to perform that examination. And hospitals and emergency rooms have those nurses that are trained with sexual assault. So they're looking for pubic hair, bodily fluids, anything that they can link up to the alleged perpetrator. And that's why it's important that Cedric says he voluntarily that night gave the officer a swab to have his DNA to match to any DNA that they might get from the young lady.
Absolutely.
And was there any DNA in this case?
As far as I recall, no, there was not.
Cedric, do you remember if there was any DNA?
No DNA.
Okay. Did your lawyer at the time get a copy of the DNA report?
From my understanding, he did.
And there was no DNA?
And there was no DNA.
Okay. Do you know if she was taken to get that hospital examination that night?
Well, he told me that she was, and from my understanding that the mother was supposed to take her that night, or probably took her the next morning to the hospital, but they did supposed to have ran a test on her.
Yeah, I feel like they did a SANE evaluation. I just don't remember or recall what the outcome was, and it certainly didn't. If they did one, it certainly didn't implicate Mr. Mason,
Right?
Because he didn't
be
do
here.
it.
They wouldn't have dismissed it.
Right, exactly.
Right. Interesting. So it's interesting that the night that the mother called, the police arrested you that night without doing the testing first. That's a little unusual. Usually, they wait and get the video and
Right.
do the video and wait. Did you hear anything about that, Mr.
Well,
Cedric?
I asked a question about that to the officer that was interviewing me, and she said that she had to do a job because Sky was a minor. So that was like basically the reason why I really went to jail, because she was a minor. Now maybe if she was a little older, maybe they would have took the accessories to go through the testing first and getting a statement from her, and then come back later on and arrest me or whatnot. But by her being a minor, I guess I had to go to jail that night because she was a minor.
And I don't recall, I was just trying to look, but I'm trying not to make a whole lot of noise.
That's okay.
I don't recall, was there an arrest warrant for you, or did they just arrest you that night? They didn't go and file an arrest warrant based on, okay.
There's no probable cause statement.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to.
They arrested me that night. I stayed in, like I said, I was in the back of the vehicle for 8 hours.
And while you're in the back of the vehicle, do you remember if police officers were going through the apartment and checking to see the child? Did the child have a separate bedroom, or was it two bedroom or one bedroom?
No, it's a 4-bedroom.
So they should have been going through and checking her sheets and getting DNA off her sheets. And did you notice if they were taking things out of Sky's room?
All I noticed was the officer that was on the scene. He was talking and with the parent and the aunt, which is Tamika World. They was talking. He was doing basically more talking to them, and I think he also talked to Sky inside the house. I didn't see it, but far as taking any evidence, no, I didn't see him do any of that. They didn't do any of that.
So help me, based on you being in jail and your lawyer reading the police report to you and the allegations, was it your understanding that the sexual assault was supposed to have occurred that day or months before?
No, it was supposed to be that day.
So it's like the mom had called the police like right then, like she caught you, she saw you. I mean, how was that supposed to be?
She claimed that she set up a recording because she claimed that I was stealing from her or whatnot. So she put up a recording, and she went to the store, left Sky there. Like, that's something normal. That ain't nothing unusual. So she went to the store and she came back and went in her room, came back out and said she had to go back to the store, left Sky again, but she never did leave to go to the store the second time. She stayed. She was inside the driveway. And she claimed that she had it on video, but we never.
Did she ever produce a video?
There was no video.
There was no video.
But that was. Do you recall that was in the police report?
I recall that being what she told the police.
So wouldn't the police have wanted to look at the video that night if there was a video? Because you can play back a video.
Right. I think in her interview, I think what she told the police is that she set up a recording in order to trap him to do something. I don't know what. And then that recording was knocked off or turned off by him, which is not really supported by anything either. So it kind of seems like it borders on the ridiculous is what it
does
really
border on
is.
ridiculous, but did
And
she have like
there was
video
no-
equipment in the room? I mean, 'cause
No, what she did, from my understanding, she set her phone up. And like I said, the second time she went to the store, she told me to go into the room and plug the TV up for Sky to watch TV in the room.
that really happened.
Now that happened.
Okay.
But I was in the living room watching the playoffs, so I know she was in the room watching TV at one point in time. And when she asked me to go in to plug the TV up,
Now, why would you have to plug it up? Why wouldn't it already be plugged?
right. But I wasn't paying no attention. I was into this game, so I wasn't really paying no attention. So she had to unplug the TV, the HD card to the TV, because I remember plugging it back into the TV. So, and Sky was in the room. Mm-hmm. So when I crossed over the bed to plug it up, wherever she had her phone at, it had to knock it down. Did
you see a phone?
No, I didn't never see it. I didn't even know it was no recording going on until the officer told me about this.
Okay.
So that's
But even if it knocked it down, wouldn't it have at least shown you walking in the room?
Right.
Was there a tape of you walking in the room? I mean, you tape
I
until you stop it, until it gets knocked over.
Right.
Shouldn't it be a beginning tape?
from my understanding, I thought it. Maybe I don't know what she showed them, but that's what I
You
thought.
never saw it?
I never saw it.
And it was never included as part of evidence in this case or ever submitted to. As far as I know, I didn't even know about it until he and I were talking leading up to this, and I was looking through some of her statements, the mom's statements.
Right.
It's like, oh, what's this video? Yeah, so I don't know that it was ever turned over to the police because I don't think there was a real video.
Real video.
Right.
That was just something that was said. Now, was this mom a normal working woman?
Well, at one point in time, she did have a job, but her kids were so bad she couldn't really find nobody to keep hold. I mean, to watch them.
So she had more than one kid in the house.
Right.
How many?
Well, she had her other son, which is right at that time was like 12.
Was he supposed to be home at the time?
He wasn't there because, like I say, he didn't got to the point where he got grown, wasn't trying to listen. So
at 12, okay.
At 12, so he's staying at his grandmother's house on his dad's side. So just basically left just Sky there because her older daughter is staying with her sister. She's going to school in Cyprus somewhere. And so it just left Sky there. And she was really kind of getting tired of dealing with Sky because Sky is on so many medication for as what she been going through, for as the time when she got molested at 3.
Oh, so she really did get molested.
In my understanding, that was what was told to me. Now, far as if it really happened, I don't know because look at me, look at the situation I went through.
Did the man go to jail?
Yeah, he was. He was in jail, and he stayed in jail until he turned into an adult. And I think.
Oh, so he was a child?
He was a teen. He was a juvenile.
Wow.
And so
was this like a relative of hers?
Yeah. It was my girlfriend's ex-girlfriend. It was her nephew that did it. So he stayed in jail till he turned into an adult, and I think what they gave him was time served, but he had to register when he got out, and he couldn't find nowhere to register because he didn't have really nowhere to go, and he ended up getting into some more trouble and ended up going back to jail. So like at the time I was in jail, he was in jail too. So, and I think Mr. I think Dorian went to go see him.
Okay.
I might have looked him up, but I know because he told me about it.
And what was the point in Dorian seeing him?
I don't know if he was going to ask him any questions about his situation, dealing with his aunt and Sky. I don't know, because he never did come back.
So he was going to be a witness in your case.
Could have
about
been
what had happened.
Right.
So the big question in a sexual assault of a child case is, when children are able to talk about sex on a video, why would a child know how to talk about sex? That's what lawyers have to determine on both sides. The prosecution, if they believe the child, they should believe him because they took charges. And then the defense attorney has to decide, if he didn't do it, how would she know how to tell this story? How would you answer this question in this case or any other case?
Well, I can only speak generally because I don't know how Dorian approached that here. But I think we look at who do we look at? We look at the mom or whoever might be the person to create that false story.
Right.
So we certainly don't want to think kids are out there making up these false allegations. We usually look at, I don't want to say always the mom, but an older, parent or aunt or uncle or someone that might coach them into making a false allegation. Right. And who knows what motivates people to lie? Money or greed or jealousy or whatever. So, but we and from our perspective, we try not to draw any conclusions from anything at the outset of the case. And so, but the more we look into it, it may we may explore a little bit into a complaining witness's parents or whomever, and see that there might be a source of motivation to either lie themselves or to cause a child to lie. A lot of times when we've seen them, and not necessarily in this case, but a lot of times where we've seen them is, there's divorce or custody issues, or CPS is involved, or infidelity on one side, so they want to make them pay for it, or any number of things. I think potentially could be a motivation for a parent or whomever to convince a child to say this or that. And I know that one of the things that investigators and we want to look at too is whether or not a child's exposed to sex, pornography, or discussions, or talking about it with friends and things like that, because we want to know where did they get these descriptive terms, because at the CAC, in the videos that they do with the interviewers, they get them to describe the parts and the acts and things like that. Right. And so if we believe that the complaining witness is not being truthful, we want to look into where might that person, boy or girl, find out about the acts that they're alleging. Might it be from kids at school, and then transfer that into what they're being coached to say, or whatever. So
very good. Did you feel like in this case it was a little easier than normal because there was already a history of videos of sexual exposure that this child had through videos at the Children's Assessment Center going back to 2000 and what did you say 2011? Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was a defense attorney, I never had it this good. I was always looking for them. There were some in cases I did, but they weren't readily available. So I'm glad to know that my office is sharing those things.
Absolutely,
because it wasn't always shared.
Yeah. No, it's great. So that's exactly, going through and seeing, we didn't know what to expect when we first sat down to watch the videos. And we go through here and I'm like, wait, this is not our guy. This is some other guy. And
right.
Watch the second video, and this is some other guy.
Wow.
And then she goes back on a third or fourth video and recants on the second guy and doubles down on the first guy. And this is years later.
Wow.
And so and I don't know if that goes towards the complaining witness's mindset on fabricating the story, or if something really did happen, but maybe she feels shame or embarrassment about it, or maybe at 3 she remembers it one way, and then at 5 and at 8 and at 11 she remembers it differently. So I don't know.
You don't know.
And of course we have Cedric telling us, look, this is the history between me and her mother. And so that helps us to kind of see maybe there's some motivation there. Maybe it's just plain old vindictiveness and spite. But, and so...
It's a shame to use a child like that if that's what happened.
Absolutely.
That's terrible.
And so that's, I guess to answer your question, that's very good for us on the defense in this case, because we can see a pattern of these types of outcries.
Did you see, I know you didn't see all the videos, but even in the two that you saw, did you see a pattern of the story of how the sexual act occurred being similar?
Not really. The only similarity that I recall, and just kind of looking through the notes this evening, the similarity isn't in the acts. The similarity is in not answering the question and not being very specific. It's like, she may describe one act in very vague terms when she's 3, and then in 5 describe the same act with a different person, but a different way, but always using vague terminology. And of course, we don't fault her for that. She's 3. She doesn't.
Baby,
but
yes.
but even when she's older, using very broad terms to describe things, and then when the interviewer would ask a follow-up question, she'd be evasive and like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or I'm shy, or I don't, and then she would deflect so that she wouldn't have to give more detail. And I noticed that, so that's the pattern that I observed here, not necessarily the same act being alleged multiple times, but her kind of demeanor and how she interacted with, especially with the follow-up questions.
Did it seem like she'd been coached because of that, or she just really was afraid to go into any more detail, or it was too painful for her to talk about?
I'll tend my answer more towards the first part, that she seems coached, but maybe not coached so much as suggested that this is what happened to you, right? And I don't mean from the interviewers.
Sure.
I just mean, from mom or aunt or whomever is, I guess, implanting the idea with her. But because in Cedric's case, or because there was no truth to it.
Well, she never said he did anything.
Yeah, and I was looking through here. I think she had made 1 or 2, but and I think I misspoke earlier. The point is, it was very vague, and it was very vague. And then when there was a follow-up question, or if there was a follow-up question, there was never a response that would support that vagueness.
I just know that the videos I've seen, and I've seen many in my career, it's always astonishing. Because I'll have guys say, oh, she's not going to be able to prove it. I didn't do anything to that girl. And the guys might have been telling the truth. I don't know. But when you look at those videos, it would always be astonishing to me that these little kids could talk about sex. And they could use dolls and make it work. Like they could talk, use anatomically correct dolls and, do things with it. So it would be like, no, somebody's done something to this kid. I don't know who it is, but somebody's done something. Because they go from a naive child, playing, to being able to talk about things, and they use it in childish terms, but they're describing an adult act. So,
Absolutely. And
I've seen videos and cried. They were so sad that the child could, communicate that.
Right.
Yeah, talk like that.
because they shouldn't know about that.
They should know about
and
that.
if they do, there's a source for that knowledge.
Exactly.
And so I mentioned it earlier, one of the things we want to know is whether or not that child's been exposed to pornography, and then taking that image and kind of putting themselves in that position just mentally, or did this actually happen and they're describing an actual event.
And I have caught Sky twice. I have caught Sky because we'll be in the room, we'll be in the house, and when she get quiet and you don't hear, she's up to something, she's doing something, she ain't got no business. So I done naturally caught Sky twice watching porn on the phone, and I done told her mother didn't discipline her one time.
Now, how can you watch porn on the phone? I don't understand.
I mean, however they pull it up on the internet. On the phone. But I have caught her twice.
How would a child know how to pull porn up on? I don't know. I've never seen porn on a phone. I know it's the internet connection, but you have to key something in to get it to come up, right?
Right. You have to log something in.
I mean, unless there's some app that's already on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, just to guess, I mean, anything's available on smartphones, right? So, I mean, perhaps she, at school and she's friends are talking about it and they have phones and they're showing her or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating, but.
Interesting.
But with Sky, the only thing I can say with Sky is Sky done been through so much, and like I was telling Mr. Hobbs, she's a very intelligent young girl, but she done been through so much, and the medication that they have on, and they done switched her medication so many different times, it has her mind just wondering. Because sometimes Sky can go to school and be just as sweet as she can be, and then some days they call and, hey, you need to come get her. She's going into a fit. You know, she's singling out. She don't want to deal with nobody. She just want to lay on the floor. You know, she just goes into her act. And then at one point in time, I used to start thinking that Sky know what she doing, so to where when she wants some attention, she'll do that to get some attention because she's not getting the attention at home from her mom, you know. And so, you know, and even when she used to go to a doctor and see a psychologist, you know, she'll shut down. Sometimes she'll talk a little bit and then she'll just shut down, you know, so.
That sounds like that baby's been through a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that you've left that family alone and you don't re-expose that child to anything, any memories, whether they're suppressed or supplanted in you or, you know, transferred or whatever. Just stay away from that family.
Trust me, I am.
Yeah,
Let that baby heal if she can.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow, so that's an interesting approach. So let's get to where, in this case, why do you think this case was dismissed? And
Well, I think because of the lack of evidence. I know that Dorian reached out to Mr. Otto from the DA's office, you know, several times in between dockets and on docket, and kind of laying the foundation. Look, there's no evidence here, and kind of added into the fact that like you pointed out, like all these other videos of alleging different people with different acts, and over the course of her short life, something's going on, but it has nothing to do with Cedric. And that whatever other demons she has, Cedric's not the source of them. And I think Mr. Otto, you know, finally, you know, understood that that's really what the case was, that they've got the wrong guy. And if something happened to her, they need to look elsewhere. And so, like I said, I wasn't involved in any of the direct conversations with Mr. Otto, especially leading up to the dismissal. But I know that that's been our strategy from the beginning, is to point out that he didn't do it. There's no physical evidence, and her statements and her mother's statements and the outcry witness statements were also just not credible. There was just nothing to support the allegations that they were making. And so, he made the right decision and dismissed the case.
was it dismissed before it was set for trial?
I don't recall.
Was your case ever set for trial?
They didn't never want to set it for trial. Mr. Coulter kept trying to set it for trial, and they would never set it for trial. So he told me, he said, well, if they don't dismiss it, I'm gonna try my best to go and get us a trial date. And I went to court in February, and they dismissed it.
I think one of the complicating factors on that is not to necessarily throw the DA's office under the bus here, because Harvey kind of threw a wrench into a lot of things. I mean, it certainly helped when Cedric was able to make bond in November. Right. That certainly helped to then, now we're not in so much of a rush. He's not in prison or he's not in jail. Right. Let's, you know, we can maybe take a step back and take a breath. We don't need to necessarily get that speedy trial right now. Right. You know, however, he was in jail for a while, kind of leading up to Harvey. But you know, so again, I don't want to throw the DA's office under the bus, like, no, we're not giving him his trial. I think it was more of he's out on bond, let's take a breath, let's kind of really evaluate this before we go through the expense and hassle of bringing a jury into this case where we can't prove it. So I think having a little bit of a slower approach after he made bond actually helped, rather than, and Mr. Kotler's absolutely right. If we couldn't make any progress with your office, with the DA's office, we were certainly going to exercise our right to a jury trial. But it helped being out on bond. Right. We could kind of take a breath, and you know, who knew what was going to happen after Harvey? I think we're now starting to get a regular set of jury trials, but you know, for a while there, it didn't look like anybody was going to get to go, especially on serious cases where you got to have 65, 75 people in the, you know, to pick from. So,
and things are still not the same. It's June 6, 2018. Hurricane Harvey was the end of August, 1st of September of 2017, and our 20-story criminal justice system was destroyed. We don't know when it'll be occupied again. At Monday, June the 4th, 2018, we started having limited jail dockets over there, but it's not working because the elevators don't work to bring the people in jail under under the city. They really kind of go under this tunnel system to come up, and some of those elevators are still destroyed. So it's not really working out. The court is still being held at the civil building, where the criminal judges are sharing with the civil judges in the old family law center that has been abandoned and empty. So it's really, we're still working under disaster, and we don't have a date when we will occupy our courts again. The prosecutors who were in that building are now in 11 different buildings. So it's been a challenge for all of us. How did you find working with the DA's office? What was your opinion, Cedric?
Working with, I mean, they just take things and run with it, you know, and I feel like they should look into more evidence before you can just take a person, lock them up, and just, cause I was incarcerated. I was in there with guys that been in there for 18 months, 2 years, 22 months, fighting cases like mine that they don't have no evidence. And then, of course, Harvey came and it set them off even more. So, I mean, you know, you got guys that are locked up that are innocent, and then you got some weird, strange people that need to be punished. But, I mean...
Well, the DA's office really doesn't control that part. I think Harvey heard it a lot, and you know, like you said, when the allegations are made, people don't know if you did it or not. So the bonds are going to be similar no matter who you are.
Right.
You know, just based on your background. So you just don't know, because we do have to protect society.
Right.
Well, I am glad to know that our office did dismiss the case and didn't string you along for 2 years until you could get a trial date.
Wow.
Because the judges are not in their courts and they don't have routine trial dates. They can just give you a trial every Monday like they used to.
Right.
They're sharing, so they're on some kind of rotation. I don't know what it is.
I can't figure it out either.
Nobody can figure it out, but it's some kind of rotation. So that we know that that's going on. So I'm glad that Alan Otto. And so you told me that on the prosecutor that ultimately dismissed it, your office wrote a letter of commendation, and I know you probably didn't write it personally, but why do you think that was necessary? I mean, why did y'all think that was a good thing to do?
Well, because of Mr. Otto's professionalism, both in this case and another case that we've worked on with him recently, and Mr. Kotler, we have a really good relationship with your office and most of the prosecutors there, but Mr. Otto really finally took the time to sit down and evaluate this case. And I think, and I say finally, I don't mean that in a derogatory manner. I just mean, you know, finally getting a chance to look at everything that we've been able to present to him, and to show him what our theory of the case was and what our theory of, you know, the motivation to fabricate, and actually taking a hard look at it. And Mr. Otto did that, and that's, I think, why Mr. Kotler decided to write a letter to your office and say, hey, he needs to be commended because this was a tough case. Nobody, you know, I can't imagine being the prosecutor that has to tell, you know, the family, hey, I got to dismiss this case. But I mean, the facts are the facts, and you know, we can't change that. The prosecutor can't change that. The family can't change that. And so, but he, you know, he did the right thing, and I think that's, you know, it's. I think it's brave to do that.
Right.
It'd be maybe harder to do that than it would be to just go to trial and, you know, let the chips fall where they may. But you never know what 12 people are going to do in a jury. And so rather than risk, you know, Cedric's freedom and his, you know, having to register for the rest of his life, I think, you know, Mr. Otto did the right thing. And I think that's sometimes a very hard decision. I know that it was a hard decision in this case, and he did the right thing.
Well, one of the things DA Kim Og did was she did give the prosecutors the right to do what they think is right again. Now, some of them are scared because some bosses might still question them a lot for doing it because, like, they might be kind of in the middle and, you know, Kim is not seeing it. But they do have the right to evaluate things honestly. Although our main goal is to protect society, but we do have to protect society on both sides. If it's not a good case, and if we don't believe we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, it is fair to not bring 12 jurors in, or like you said, 75 in, to pick 12, to try to sit through something that you already know that the jury is going to have a reasonable doubt.
Right.
So it does take courage. Have you seen, and I'm putting you on the spot now, but have you seen a change in the prosecutor's attitude since we've taken over? A lot of people say they have, but
I have.
I don't know, and you can tell me.
I don't have any anecdotal kind of, you know, response to that. So a change in the sense that I don't know that I've seen a change, honestly. Individual prosecutors, perhaps, but as a whole, I think it all kind of averages out. And so I think what it really takes is a prosecutor who's attentive, but it also takes a defense attorney that, we deal in kind of fast, immediate information. Right. And so if you're in court on a setting and you can't communicate well to the prosecutor, you're not going to get their attention.
Right.
So I don't know if maybe by and large, everyone's more attentive or better or worse, but I have had some really good experiences with prosecutors lately. And I think their attention on individual cases has gone up a little bit.
That's difficult during these times because they are going through a lot right
Absolutely.
now. They're going through a lot. The prosecutors who were in the criminal justice building are now in the, we call it the RTC, but they're out in an office in the Galleria that the county owns. And so every morning they have to get there at 6 in the morning, go through their cases for the day, haul them all the way down to the old jail, 1301 Franklin, that's abandoned. And we have created this makeshift staging area. And then prior to Monday, they were taking them across to the civil court for bond dockets, and they were walking all those boxes over to 701 San Jacinto Jail to have jail dockets. Then they were walking those cases over to 1200 Baker Street to have female jail dockets. And then if they were having trials, they were having trials anywhere. They could be in the civil building, they could be in the federal building at 515 Rusk. They've had some trials at South Texas College of Law, which is down the street. So it has been chaotic, to say the least. And you know how hot it is, and they're carrying all those files. Because,
well, and then we had a cold winter too.
Yeah.
And so it's outdoor conditions pretty much every day for anybody. I mean, defense attorneys and
How have y'all been living with this? How has the defense bar been dealing with this?
We don't have as many files as your prosecutors do each day, but we've got 5 or 6 a day, and it could be in one of 5 different places that we have to be. But every judge wants us there when they call docket.
Right.
So it helps that Dorian and I work kind of in tandem. So I may take the cases that are at the civil courthouse while he's taking the cases that are in the family building, or vice versa. Or they used to have docket in the basement of the jail, so I would do the jail docket and he would do the civil. The cases that are on bond over in the civil building. So it helps that we can split things up. But heaven forbid I have to be out of county, or Mr. Kotler, like today, has to be in Louisiana for a federal case. He stuck me, for tomorrow's docket. Luckily, it's light, but it's you can get spread pretty thin.
It's painful right now.
Absolutely,
it's very painful, and we don't know what is the defense bar hearing that the criminal justice building will be open again. When are y'all hearing?
Well, we're full of skeptics and cynics. So, you talk to one person, it's like, they're not ever going to build that thing. We just got to, level it and build something new. That's
what we would love.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's what we would love. But
the more level-headed is like, I think, 2019 is a little optimistic. Maybe 2020 we'll be back online over there. So, and of course, there's, everybody has a different opinion as to what changes should be made to the building now that we have it. So, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I guess the rumors are that nothing's ever going to get done because it moves at the speed of government, and so right, and so, we'll be doing this for a while.
It's interesting. I can just tell you that. Well, I'm getting a lot of good reports from the prosecutors. I'm getting from some of the old school ones like Anthony Osso, and some of the old ones. They're saying that the prosecutors are coming through, actually listening to them. And like I said, it's challenging right now because in the old days, they come to one building. Then when it's time for docket, if they get there between 6:30 and 7, they're getting ready. They just take their files on a cart up to the floor that they're going to. And so they really should have been more attentive then. It's harder because they're spending a lot of transportation time now, going back and forth.
I want to point out something too. So, and I don't know if this is kind of within your realm in the office or who does this, but recently many of the felony chiefs and felony 2s and felony 3s were like all of a sudden shifted at once. And so kind of to go back to my statement earlier about whether I've seen a change, I do notice more attention, but when so many shift at once, then we got cases that are old. We got to start all over again.
Oh, I know.
And then you got to get those prosecutors with their hundreds of cases caught up and pay attention to my case because it's more important than this guy's case, and it's not. I mean, every case.
I'll deal with that. I'll deal with that. Tom Berg is the first assistant dealing with cases. I deal with operations and the process. So it's kind of like Kim took the first assistant and split it in half. And so I'm her chief financial officer, really. I do more of the money. But,
Okay.
but I do the process, the procedures. Our goal is to scan everything, as you know, stick it through the portal, and eventually, and Joanne's working on this, stick it through with an offer and make sure that the prosecutor, so what we're trying to achieve is, while the prosecutors are in court, when new cases come in, the paralegals are actually gathering all the discovery, throwing it in the, uploading it to the computer, sending it through the defense portal, and then the prosecutor should look at it before court and send an offer. That's what we want. I know that's not being accomplished
I'm
yet,
seeing,
but that's,
I'm seeing a little bit of that.
That's the process that operationally that I'm working
Right.
on, and that the offer is out there. We're trying to go paperless. Obviously, that's challenging because, if there's 60 cases on a docket, we could spread them out on a table. All 60 defense lawyers could come in, take them, look at it, go talk to their lawyer. I'm trying to emphasize to the staff that the only way this is going to work is you got to stick the offer through there, because otherwise they have to have some point to negotiate. But we hope to go to a world that's more like federal,
Right.
and we have meaningful settings. So we don't talk in court, that,
Yeah.
you can call them on the phone, or, if your client's in jail, then when you come there, you already have the discovery, you already have the offer, you talk to them, but hopefully you can go to the jail and talk to them, print out what you need, give them copies of what you want to give them copies of, and actually have a meaningful discussion. So when you do come to court, you can say, okay, I saw the offer, I read the discovery like you, I see the offer you made, I've gone over it with my client at the office or in jail, and this is our counter. That's my goal.
And to some extent, that's at least what Mr. Cutler and I have done, especially because of Harvey and having jail dockets, and it's been really hard. Rather than on a case that we're appointed on where the person's in the holdover cell, you can go back cell and you go back there and talk to them. And we get the case at the court and then go talk to the client. And for the most part, the discovery is uploaded, typically an offense report or at least a narrative, if not the actual offense report itself.
A lot of times, sometimes they're still gathering things and the supplements aren't there.
Right. But we're able to go in and talk at least, somewhat knowledgeable about what the allegation is.
And you can take your laptops to jail now.
Right.
And they started that about 5 years ago, where you can actually physically take the laptop when you go talk to your client.
Right.
So you can read it to them if you don't want to, print it.
Absolutely. And so that's working pretty well. I've seen a few times where the offers come through, but we don't have access to that. I think there are certain things through the DA portal that individual prosecutors can turn on and turn off. I don't know how it works, but for example, like RIP notes, restitution injury punishment notes for a complaining witness. I know that sometimes they're online or through the portal, but not where I can see it. Same thing with like an offer. So I'll go, in the 351st, hand them the file. They'll open up their version, the DA's portal, and
It doesn't look like yours.
It doesn't look like mine.
Well, no, the only thing that you shouldn't be able to see, is the way Gary Zoller, our IT guy, and Joanne have told me, is that if we put something in work product.
Right.
But we did, all of the managers went to court Monday, since we were supposed to have it back in CJC, and Danny Easterlin said it would be good if y'all saw what we saw. And we're working on that.
Yeah. No, and
that's going to be that's our next project. No, we want to make this user so it'll work like this, but we don't know exactly what y'all see. We thought y'all saw what we saw. I'm being told to wrap this up. So, Cedric, is there anything you want to say in closing? Thank God I'm free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty I'm free at last.
That's right.
All right. You want to say anything in closing?
The only thing I'd like to say is that I'm glad we got a good outcome from Mr. Mason. And the only other thing is that we're trying to get his case expunged. And I think we talked about it earlier, that we just, I think we have a little bit of hurdles with kind of interpretation of the law on the expunctions for these kind of
Shoot
cases.
me an email and I'll check on it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something